The Sterling family empire was crumbling, and I watched it happen from the shadows with a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Not because I cared about the money, God knows I had enough of my own, but because it had taken total financial ruin for my family to finally notice me. I still remember that night 3 months ago, sitting at my parents' massive dining table, the same one where they'd crushed my dreams countless times before. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across familiar faces as my father delivered his latest verdict on my life choices. A consultant? He practically spat the word, swirling his aged scotch. That's your big announcement? That you've become a consultant. My mother sighed dramatically, pushing her untouched salmon around her plate. Oh, Sophia, really? We thought you were finally going to tell us something important. Important. Like my sister Madeline's promotion to Senior VP at Sterling Industries. Or my brother William's new position on the board. Those were important announcements, worthy of the sterling silver and fine china they'd laid out for tonight's dinner. I've actually built quite a successful practice, I said quietly, knowing it wouldn't matter. I specialize in corporate restructuring and... Restructuring? My brother William snorted into his wine glass. You mean helping failed businesses die slowly? How fitting. I bit back a response. If only they knew that my small consulting practice had transformed into Bennett Strategic Solutions, one of the most sought-after corporate rescue firms in the country. But they'd never bothered to ask, never even Googled my name. Sophia, my father leaned forward, his voice taking on that condescending tone I'd heard my entire life. When are you going to stop playing around and join the real business world? Sterling Industries has been in our family for 4 generations. Your great-grandfather built this company from nothing, and now you're what? Helping other people's businesses instead of your own family. I thought about the irony of his words. Sterling Industries, the family's precious legacy, was secretly drowning in debt. My position as one of the country's top corporate restructuring experts gave me access to information they thought was well hidden. I knew about the missed payments, the failed expansions, the desperate attempts to find new investors. I'm doing fine, Dad, I replied, taking a small sip of water. My business is actually quite... Nobody becomes successful as a consultant, my sister Madeline interrupted, adjusting her perfect blonde hair. It's what people do when they can't get real jobs. No offense. None taken. I smiled, thinking of the corner office I'd just leased on the top floor of the city's most expensive building, right above Sterling Industries headquarters. They'd learn about that soon enough. Well, my mother brightened artificially, at least you're not asking us for money anymore. Remember when you wanted us to invest in your business idea 5 years ago? Thank goodness we didn't waste funds on that. I remembered. I'd asked them to invest $50,000 in my startup consulting firm. They'd laughed and given the money to William instead for his 3rd failed restaurant venture. So I'd taken out loans, worked 18-hour days and built my company from scratch. Now Bennett Strategic Solutions was worth over $300 million, but in this dining room I was still the family disappointment. You'll always be a nobody, my father declared, setting down his scotch with an air of finality. That's the problem with you, Sophia. No ambition. No understanding of real business. Just small-time consulting work while your siblings run a real company. If he only knew how many real companies I'd saved from bankruptcy. How many CEOs had my private number on speed dial. How many billions in assets I'd restructured and rescued. But I stayed quiet, letting them believe what they wanted. Because I knew something they didn't. Sterling Industries was weeks away from collapse, and they'd soon discover exactly how small-time I really was. I should get going, I said, standing up. Early meeting tomorrow. Of course. My mother nodded absently. Oh, will you be at the Sterling Industries anniversary gala next month? Your sister's giving a speech about the company's bright future. I suppressed a smile. In a month there might not be a company left to celebrate. Wouldn't miss it. As I drove home to my penthouse apartment, the one they thought I couldn't afford, my phone buzzed. It was Marcus, my head of research. Ms. Bennett, you were right about Sterling Industries. Their last attempt at refinancing failed. They're trying to keep it quiet, but they'll need a miracle to survive the quarter. Any other potential investors? I asked, though I already knew the answer. No one will touch them. The only hope would be a major restructuring specialist, but But most firms won't go near a company with their level of mismanagement, I finished. Keep monitoring the situation. And Marcus? Make sure our identity stays hidden when we start buying their debt. Over the next few weeks, I watched Sterling Industries' desperate scramble to stay afloat. My father, the great CEO, had overleveraged the company on risky expansions. My brilliant sister had mismanaged operations to the point of crisis. And my business-savvy brother had approved it all from his board seat. Through various shell companies, Bennett Strategic Solutions quietly purchased Sterling Industries' debt at steep discounts. Every bank eager to get the failing company's loans off their books. Every creditor happy to take pennies on the dollar. Soon we controlled enough of their debt to force them into either bankruptcy or complete restructuring, on our terms. I maintained my weekly appearances at family dinners, listening to their increasingly strained attempts at normalcy. The perfect family image was cracking. My father drank more scotch than usual. My sister's designer outfits couldn't hide her growing panic. My brother's swagger had turned to nervous energy. Yet still they found time to criticize my life choices. At least Sophia's little consulting business means she has experience with failure, William joked one evening, his voice tight with hidden stress. If only they knew that their fate rested in the hands of the daughter they'd dismissed for so long. The nobody they'd never thought would amount to anything. Then came the day I'd been waiting for. My father called an emergency board meeting. Sterling Industries needed an immediate infusion of capital and a complete restructuring, or they'd face bankruptcy within weeks. Their only hope was a mysterious investor who'd been buying up their debt. An investor who would only meet with them tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. That night I received one final call from Marcus. Everything's set, Ms. Bennett. The board members will all be there. Your family doesn't suspect anything. I smiled, hanging up the phone. Tomorrow they'd finally learn what their nobody daughter had become. And more importantly, they'd learn that they needed my signature to save their precious empire. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving others wrong. It's letting them discover how wrong they've been all by themselves. The next morning I arrived at Sterling Industries headquarters an hour early. Not through the grand lobby entrance where my siblings strutted past security, but through my own private entrance in the building next door. From my corner office I could actually look down on my father's conference room. Miss Bennett, Marcus greeted me, tablet in hand. The Sterling board is assembling now. Your father looks tense. I smiled, adjusting my Armani suit. He should be. What's the latest valuation? Sterling Industries is worth roughly 1/10 of what it was 6 months ago. Without immediate restructuring, they'll default on their loans by end of month. Through the window, I watched board members filing into the conference room. My father at the head of the table, his usual commanding presence diminished by weeks of stress. Madeline furiously typing on her phone, probably trying to save her own career. William slumped in his chair, looking like he hadn't slept in days. My mother sat in the observers section, her perfect posture unable to hide her anxiety. She called me last night, leaving a rambling message about missing our family dinners. Funny how they suddenly wanted me around now that their world was collapsing. Time to go, I said to Marcus. Is everyone in position? He nodded. Our entire executive team is waiting in the lobby. The papers are ready. And he smiled slightly, we've got photographers ready to capture the moment. I took the private elevator down to Sterling Industries' floor. 10 years of dismissal, mockery, and condescension had led to this moment. 10 years of them calling me a nobody while I built an empire in silence. The security guard, who last week had questioned whether I really was a Sterling family member, jumped to attention as I approached. Words had clearly spread about the mysterious investor's arrival. I paused outside the conference room doors, listening to my father's voice. This investor, whoever they are, has bought up nearly 80% of our debt. Without their help, Sterling Industries dies. For generations of business gone. We cannot let that happen. Maybe they'll be reasonable. Madeline's voice shook slightly. We're still a prestigious name. We're desperate and they know it, William snapped. They'll probably strip the company for parts. I checked my watch. 9 a.m. exactly. Time to show them exactly who they'd been underestimating all these years. The doors swung open. Every head turned as I walked in, my heels clicking against marble floors. For a moment there was only confusion. Then as I took my place at the opposite end of the table facing my father, recognition dawned. Sophia. My father's voice cracked. What are you doing here? The investors' representatives are coming. I am the investor, I said calmly, opening my briefcase. Or more accurately, Bennett Strategic Solutions is. We now control the majority of Sterling Industries' debt. The silence was absolute. My mother's hand flew to her throat. Madeline's phone clattered to the table. William's mouth opened and closed without sound. That's impossible, my father finally managed. Bennett Strategic Solutions is a multi-billion-dollar firm. They're the largest corporate restructuring company in the country. Yes, I smiled. We are. Marcus and my executive team filed in behind me, distributing folders to each board member. Inside you'll find our terms for saving Sterling Industries. Full restructuring. New management. Complete operational overhaul. You're the founder of Bennett Strategic Solutions? Madeline's voice had risen an octave. But you're just a small-time consultant. Actually, I'm the CEO of a company worth $3.2 billion. The same company that now holds Sterling Industries' fate in its hands. I turned to my father. Still think nobody becomes successful as a consultant? My father's face had gone from red to white to slightly gray. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? I asked quietly. When have you ever believed in anything I've done? The board members watched in fascinated silence as decades of family dynamics played out before them. My mother had started to cry quietly, mascara tracking down her cheeks. Now then, I continued, let's discuss Sterling Industries' future. First, the current management team will need to step down. Step down. My father's voice rose. This is my company. My father's company. I corrected gently. Now it's a failing business that needs saving. Unless you'd prefer bankruptcy? I'm sure the press would love to cover the spectacular collapse of the Sterling family empire. William leaned forward, desperation in his eyes. Sophia, be reasonable. We're family. Family. I laughed softly. Was I family when you mockingly called me a nobody at every dinner? When you dismissed my business as a joke? When you told everyone I'd never amount to anything? I stood up, surveying the room. Here are your options. Either accept our restructuring terms, including the management changes, or face immediate bankruptcy proceedings. I'll give you an hour to decide. As I turned to leave, my mother's voice stopped me. Sophia, honey, wait. We didn't know. We never meant. To treat me like I was worthless? I finished for her. To spend years mocking my career while I built something bigger than Sterling Industries could ever be? To use every family gathering as an opportunity to remind me of my failures. We were trying to motivate you, my father said weakly. Well, congratulations, I replied. It worked. You motivated me to succeed beyond your wildest expectations. And now here we are. An hour later they accepted my terms. Of course they did, they had no choice. My father retired the next day, though everyone knew he'd been forced out. Madeline and William resigned their positions, their Sterling careers ending with whimpers instead of bangs. My mother tried to rewrite history, telling anyone who would listen that she'd always believed in me. I just knew Sophia would do great things, she'd say at charity events. A mother can sense these things. I let her maintain the illusion. After all, I had what I wanted. Success on my own terms without their approval or support. 6 months later, Sterling Industries had been completely transformed under Bennett Strategic Solutions leadership. The stock price had tripled. Operations were streamlined. The company my great-grandfather had built was thriving again, though no longer under family control. I still got invitation to family dinners, though they were different now. Gone were the mockery and condescension, replaced by awkward attempts at reconciliation. My father would try to discuss business strategy as if we were suddenly equals. Madeline would ask about job opportunities. William would remind me of childhood memories, trying to rekindle some sibling bond. But I had moved beyond needing their approval or acceptance. Their opinions, once so crushing, now meant nothing. I had built something they couldn't diminish or dismiss. One evening, exactly a year after that fateful family dinner where they'd called me a nobody, I hosted a corporate gala in my building's penthouse ballroom. Sterling Industries' successful turnaround was being celebrated by the business community. My family attended, of course. They watched from the sidelines as I gave the keynote speech, detailing the company's transformation. They listened as business leaders praised my vision and leadership. They smiled stiffly as photographers captured the moment the nobody daughter saved the family legacy. Standing at the podium looking out over the crowd, I thought about how far I'd come. Not just in terms of success or wealth, but in understanding my own worth. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't proving others wrong. It's proving yourself right. They'd called me a nobody, but I'd built something extraordinary. They'd dismissed my potential, but I'd exceeded even my own expectations. And most importantly, I'd learned that the best revenge isn't showing others what they lost. It's showing yourself what you can gain when you stop seeking their approval. The view from the top isn't about looking down on others. It's about finally seeing clearly just how far you've climbed.